Welcome to Always Ageless on this rainy and cool President's Day on Monday. Today, we're going to talk about technology, but don't give up and don't turn your dial because Brian Fluhr is going to make this not about technology, but about things that matter to you and your family and your aging parents. So hold on, turn up the dial, maybe get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and let's dig right into it. Brian lives here in Orange County, California. He is creating digital solutions that help older adults live safely and independently at home. And if you have an aging parent or you are one like I have, we know that that's important. But he has a strong background in digital marketing, which we all know about digital marketing these days, and product development. We're all trying to create our own products, combining that with his mission to support aging adults and their families through technology. So stay tuned. This is going to be an interesting conversation and one that I assure you at the end of our time together, you'll be glad that you listened. Brian, welcome to Always Ageless.
Valerie, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today.
We are so glad to have you. Now, we know, I see a few terms here. Let's just get them out of the way so we don't bore our audience, okay? I hear a term called AI vision or vision AI. I'm not sure I know what that means to perform safety assessments. Tell us a little bit about that. And actually, before I do that, I want to say that you certainly have won a lot of awards for your product and for what you personally have accomplished. Your product, SeniorThrive, won the Best Elderly Tech Award and then at the NETI Awards, which is notable recognition. But you've spoken publicly about how thoughtful tech, especially tools that support safety and wellness and engagement, can transform how families experience aging together. And when we spoke before this interview, you said, I'm glad to talk about my product, but that's not all I talk about. So we want to be sure today that our viewers and our listeners get all of what you have to offer. So talk to us.
Oh, well, thank you for that opportunity. You're right. There is a lot of technology that is now appearing in what, if you're in the industry, you talk about age tech. But I want to back up because I believe in something that I think is very simple. And it is the idea about if you don't treat the environment, you can't protect the person. Okay. And when I talk about the environment, I'm talking about it not in a broad sense. I mean the four walls where life actually happens. And that is, as we look at protecting ourselves and our family members, our loved ones as they age, you first have to look at the space around them because that is where most people are spending their time. Okay. So the home isn't just a building, it's the foundation of safety. And I don't share that from a healthcare lens. I come at it from watching life inside the home. So, from a personal experience, I was deeply involved in my parents' lives all the way through the end, right? Not from the sidelines, but I was in the conversations, in the details, the logistics, and there for all the subtle and sometimes not so subtle changes that happen. Now, also at the same time, my professional background is in real estate data. So I studied how people buy homes, how they build wealth through their homes, how they stay rooted in their home for decades. And so I understand how emotionally and financially central a home is to
Very,
someone's identity. And what I see
very.
though is that there's a disconnect. Oftentimes we are obsessed over the financial value of a home. We know the square footage, we know the appreciation, we know the mortgage rate. But when it comes to aging, we rarely look at how that same physical environment shapes what happens next. And that's where I had this aha moment is that we're living in the largest aging shift in history, right? We look at 97 million people, Americans over 55, they want to remain in their homes. And nearly half have lived in the same home for more than 20 years. It's 20 years. The rugs are the same, the lighting is the same, the layout is the same. But the person that's living in the home is not the same. right? So balance changes, vision changes, reaction time change. So, and the home that we feel is the safest place to be is also where most falls happen. And it's quite frankly, it's just where we spend the majority of our time, especially as we age. So I don't say that to be, scary or put a dark light on something. It's just simply that's what happens. That's reality. That's where life happens. Um, and we know that when something serious happens at home, it doesn't just cause an injury.
No.
It can change the trajectory of independence very quickly, right? So there's this quiet gap between the unchanged home and the changing human, and that's where uncertainty begins, and that's the gap that SeniorThrive is built to close.
And that's so true because we say that so many of our decisions are crisis driven, and that maybe it takes 7 phone calls, or someone says, we need to make a change, but my mom and dad are okay right now, or they say we're fine. And then one day in our group, we say the call comes. The call is either they fell, or in my case, I went to visit my mom as I did every day, but I saw some things there that caused me to say, I can't let her live here like this anymore. I can't do this. Today is the day. Her caregiver was leaving to go do a job somewhere else, and I went in her house and saw some things. And I said, I can't do this anymore. So yes, we think everything is okay. And I've read recently also, and Jeff Gray from Age Tech had a newsletter last night also about, we just think everything is okay, but we don't prepare. And I think our friend Carol Chang also said something about, that we don't think about preparing our homes until it's the very last minute. But why don't we think about it when we're buying them initially, or when we're building them, right? Why is everything the last minute? And then it's a crisis decision.
Well, and that's the crisis decision is what I hear about every day, and that really is this idea is that action doesn't happen until something bad happens, and that's like the worst time to make any decisions. Is when you're in a panic mode. Decisions don't get thought through thoroughly. And listen, I can say this is like I was local to my parents. I was taking care of my parents, and then one week I was traveling, and I let my sister know, who she doesn't live here. She lives in Colorado, and she said she was so afraid when that phone would ring. It wasn't going to be mom calling just to check in. It was going to be mom calling because dad fell, right? And so they have this panic when we should be knowing that there's confidence in the environment and in the structure and in that set up to enable that person to be at home and live successfully.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that there's a magic pill for this, except that everybody I interview at the end, if I say what's your advice, everyone's advice is plan ahead.
Well, listen, I think that's the right goal, is be proactive. I think that the nature of what we do is very reactive. You can look at that from a health standpoint. A lot of people don't start exercising until they've had their first heart attack, right? Or the doctor told them that you need to lose 25 pounds. It's reactive, right? We all know that if you walk and you eat right, then you're going to be on a better path. But it takes a scare to get people to take action. And I think from as a founder of a company that is really focused on prevention, it's a hard message to get across, right? Because people don't necessarily think about, hey, I want to protect myself, or even simple things like putting a grab bar in a shower. I was out talking to a friend who's 79 years old, and he's single. He's a very good-looking, wealthy guy, and he was like, I don't want to. I asked him about it. Do you have grab bars in your shower? And he said no. He's like, I don't want people, ladies, to think like I'm old, by having a grab bar. And it's like, it's crazy to me because I have grab bars. I've had grab bars for a long time in the shower. And I just think it just makes sense. I mean, you try to clean the bottom of your foot, right? It's like it's much easier to use a grab bar. Never mind if you're going to slip, right? So there's a lot of simple things that I think are often overlooked, and there's some people who will say, well, you need to widen the doors and you need to revamp your
Yes.
kitchen.
Sure.
Now, certainly, if circumstances happen that you're in a wheelchair or something, yeah, you might need to do that. But for the overall, to be proactive, it means just doing simple things that don't even cost much money. And one of the things we talk about Thrive Vision, which is our very simple. If you can snap a photo, you can see exactly what the problems might be within your home. So it could be a sharp edge on a desk that could cause a skin tear, or it could be something like a grab bar that needs to be replaced. But really 9 times out of 10, when we've done these phone based assessments with Thrive Vision, what we see is just too much clutter. If you look at Amazon boxes, wow, we love our Amazon.
Oh, yes, we
Yeah,
do. Oh,
everybody
yes,
loves
we do.
Amazon. So, and if you don't, you're likely still getting some boxes from somewhere. And for some reason, people have a hard time getting rid of boxes. I don't know why. I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but they cause clutter, and that's where really where the number one area of concern is. A lot of times, it's just clutter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know I talk about a lot about my mom, but my mom says, oh, so we were in a, before her current residence, she was in a 55 plus community, and she kept saying these houses weren't built for people who are older. They didn't have, the shower, the entrance of the bathroom was too small, or the refrigerator opened in the wrong direction, or this was wrong, or that was wrong. And she kept saying these weren't built, but they were built probably 40 years ago, and it was a 55 plus community, and nobody really knew what that was going to mean. What was that really going to be mean for us? And now we're all retrofitting all of them again anyway. But let's, before we talk about technology, let's go back a little bit. What happened in your life, Brian, that made you care about aging adults anyway in the first place? Was there a personal moment that switched you from one field into this?
Well, I mean, I think it goes through a couple of things. There's a couple of people in my life. Like I mentioned, my parents, very close to my parents. Both they lived a mile away. So one of the wonderful things about my parents were, they were able to they were able to do things right in terms of like um, uh, advancing their ability to remain in the home they love. That doesn't mean they didn't get it wrong in the past. So there was a time when my parents were in their 60s and they bought a home in Long Beach that was actually a reverse floor plan, which was like, hey, that's really bad. So you go in the house, kitchen, bedroom, everything is upstairs. So you got to go upstairs. And they thought it was still smart because they had what's called, a dumb waiter, which like, you could go to the grocery store, take your groceries out of the car, put them in the waiter downstairs, and it would go up, right? But it wasn't an elevator. It was just for stuff, right? And so I was so frustrated when they bought that house because I'm like, you're in your 60s, right? And typically, people are buying homes at that age. They're you're probably going to be staying in that home, and it was something they did without my strong advice, even though I was very much their consultant. When they called, I had the flu. I thought I was dying, and so they called. I'm like, do whatever you want, just do whatever you want. Well, it wasn't long before they realized that their friends didn't want to come over and barbecue out in the backyard because
Oh,
to get in they had to go upstairs and then they had to go down another stairs to get into the backyard,
oh,
and it just
oh,
became not a practical place to live. Well, over time they smartened up and then they moved to a single story home, and they made the modifications necessary. They had remodeled. They put in the grab bars. There was one small step in the garage. They put a ramp in there, even though at the time they didn't need it. They were just planning B style handles in the kitchen,
sure.
just doing a lot of the right things. And so And then, before that, I had my grandparents who also were in the same boat, in the sense of, that home is where life happens. Home is where they wanted care to happen, and home is where they ultimately wanted to pass away. And so that influence that influenced me. The idea is that, I've seen uh, senior living facilities and places like that, and they do work. They do work at the right time for the right person. But if you can, um, most people state their goals is they want to remain in the home they love.
Yes.
And so how do you do that? Well, it takes, there's a certain formula to do that. And people don't necessarily realize that, but it does take, uh, being wellness, right? Your personal wellness matters in,
Yes.
in aging home.
Yes.
Your home certainly matters, right? If
Yeah.
you're in a home, like I said, my parents' home, in their late 60s was completely wrong for them. Stairs all around the house, just not correct, right? So you really want to be in a home that works. Now, there's plenty of people across the United States who live in multi-story homes. They've lived in, almost 50% of people who are age 55 and over have lived in the same home for 20 plus years. So, at that time they had kids, they were upstairs, it's fine. Now, what you want to do, though, is try to look at ways to make that home work for you
Yes.
in this stage of life. Can you move the bed downstairs someday if you need to, right? You need to make sure that you have the space planned or ideas planned for that ahead of time. So, I think that's really where we go. Where preparation is and being proactive is really essential, and we can't be blind to the fact that, hey, I'm feeling good today, you may not tomorrow.
And was this move from with your parents from one house to another, was that kind of what inspired you to say, I need to get involved in this. I need to be more helpful. I need to do this for more people?
Um, well, I did start with this idea about, uh, sensors in the home, hardware, that there should be ambient, tracking of either falls, would be ultimate, or movement. Did mom get out of bed this morning? That's like number one thing that people want to know is there did mom get out of bed? Did dad get out of bed? Right?
Yeah.
And so there was this, my initial thought was there's this opportunity to do that through ambient passive technology. But what I also realized is I don't know anything about hardware. I don't want to get into that, and I started thinking about, you know, well, can you create a franchise business where you have people come into the home and do inspections. And that came out of my real estate background, where during COVID, that there would be appraisals that would happen remotely. So when somebody is looking to get a home loan, a appraiser comes in typically and does evaluation of the home. But when COVID happened, people didn't want people in their homes, so they started using cameras. And that's where I started thinking about, okay, well, here we go, is either from, just people just don't want other people in their home. Two is, if you're in a rural community, you may not have the opportunity to have an occupational therapist to come to your home, et cetera. Right. And
Right.
so that's where I started thinking about, hey, if you use this for appraisal technology to look at a home, why not be using technology to look the home for safety, independence, for
Right.
comfort?
So let's take
Yeah.
a little step back. Let's take a break here and let's talk about, for our viewers and our listeners, what would a home assessment look like in this kind of a situation? We know, but the people who are driving today or listening to us may not know exactly. So we would either do it virtually, right? Or a person would go there, kind of like an appraiser type of situation, and they would go there and look through the home from the outside through the inside and determine what things could be done to make the home safer, more enjoyable, and easier to live in. Is that a good assessment of
In
the
a nutshell,
assessment?
right? So, well, no. There's two. There really is two things that happen. One is, at least with our the way our platform works, is one is you first go through questions, so we understand you and your needs today and where they might evolve to in the future. So, and those needs are based on both your health and wellness. Do you use a cane, for example? It's a very different, walkthrough of a home if somebody is using a walker or a cane or something. So we want to understand. One is how are you? Where are you in your wellness? Two is what type of home do you have? I mean, if you have a multi-story home, well, fine, but is your bedroom upstairs? Do you go upstairs? Plenty of people don't go upstairs, right? So that's the other thing. We look at the person, we look at the and ask questions about the environment. Okay, then we say, okay, well, simple snap a photo. And here's what we like to do is we tell people stand in the middle of the room when it's possible. You can't do that in the bathroom, but if you're in a living room, try to stand in the middle of the room. Take 4 pictures, one of each corner of the room. Then you get basically a 360-degree view, right? And then what happens is instantly, our Thrive Vision technology will look at those images and assess that based on your profile, as well as millions of other images that we have assessed. And then we'll come back with recommendations, high, medium, and low recommendations of things that might need to be fixed. And we say why, because and by the way, one of the things I want to point out is like if during our assessment you say, oh, I love to read, for example. Well, we're going to be looking at is there a space in that living room that might be by a window where reading might be better, right, for you? So it's really smart in both looking at the independent nature and the safety nature, but also the human nature of how you might live in that space. So then what we do is, let's just say, if we come up with and we find that, oh, there's a potentially loose rug, we tell you that this is how you fix the loose rug. We'll give you a DIY, do it yourself version. We also link to YouTube videos that talks about proper rug placement. 3, we link to Amazon products like, hey, rugs with Gorilla Grip on the bottom. Or 4, we recommend a person, either an occupational therapist to come in, or if it's something that might require something like a grab bar or something like that, we've partnered with Thumbtack, which is a provider of different services for around the home. Now that's how we do it, because what we see is this is like, we're not trying to replace humans. We're trying to scale home safety and independence. And so we know that not everybody is going to bring somebody into the home. And sometimes it takes the initial analysis to prompt people then to take action. And so when a daughter comes into a home of their older parents, a lot of times conversations are based on feeling. I feel like maybe you're not safe or something. But when you go, let's take a look at this room, and you scan it, and then you can actually have a list of these things, and then you have a data-based conversation, right? I've been concerned about your kitchen, and you cook a lot, and I'm worried about that. Let's just take a look, and then you can talk through the issues, and then you can decide on which of these actually makes sense to implement now. Maybe you don't want to do it, or later. And so that differs from other modalities, right? A lot of times, it's a clinically based assessment where a somebody who is would come in like an occupational therapist or something like that. They would then do a more clinically based walkthrough, which is fantastic. But the idea is that to scale this, to make sure that we reach as many people as possible, we want to give as many people as possible the simple tools to make those scans happen themselves.
You've mentioned a couple of things that I think it's important to accent to our audience, is that it's important that we think that our people, our clients, our patients, our parents don't have to be old by whatever means that is, whatever definition that is. They also don't have to be disabled. You brought up something about reading. So let's say, for example, that I want to stay in my home, and right now there's nothing about it that I have to leave, but but my daughter who lives in Minnesota or Wisconsin, Illinois, wherever, is worried about me because they think I'm old. So if you came and I said, okay, well, I like to read, or I like to cook, or my refrigerator door is in the wrong direction. A lot of those things are things you can fix very easily. Right. People don't know you can turn your refrigerator door to the other side, and you can change lighting, and you can even have lighting in the hallway, and you can have lighting in what we call task lighting. So there's so many things we can do that aren't crisis based, right? They don't have to be a crisis issue, and maybe you don't even need them, but it might be something that would be nice to have. So it's just your children have the assurance that you are preparing to stay there longer and that you're a little bit safer. And you have the assurance that you're a little bit safer, a little bit more comfortable. And another thing that's important is that there are so many things, so many inventions, we'll call them, or devices that are coming along that are they're so new and easy and not incredibly expensive and easy to install. It's almost silly not to look at this and use them. Would you agree?
I listen. I agree 100%. And yeah, let me highlight one thing that we do to gently motivate people, and bring older adults who might be living independently on the same page with a family member who might be living far away. And that is the idea when we talk about these room scans. Is what we do is we have a weight, we assign a point value just to a room. So bathroom has 100 points. Why does it have 100 points? Well, because it's the room everybody uses all day every day,
And it's
right?
important. That's
And
right.
so you're right. If we spot issues, we say that issue is worth negative 10 points. So what does that mean? It's like, hey, you didn't you don't have a grab bar in the shower. We're going to take off 10 points from that score. So now you're down to 90, right? And maybe your faucets aren't correct. Maybe down to 60 or 70. So here's what happens. We say this is the score for the bathroom. Now, when you add a grab bar to a task list, because we want you to actually accomplish these things. Because listen, I know it should be a law in the United States. I don't want to get into politics and laws, but every home should have every bathroom should have grab bars. That said, once they say, "Hey, I completed this," they get their points back and they get double points back. So something that was minus 10 points is now, because they fixed it, they get 20 points. Now what does that mean? What does that do? What does that do? It shows progress. It shows initiative. It shows momentum. It shows rhythm. And it also can show people who are invested in your success and of living at home that you're taking action. And that reflects in we have a shared dashboard for older adults as well as family members, and the older adult actually controls what they share. So if they want to share the fact that they got a 70 in their bathroom score and they fixed it, they can and I encourage them to do that, because that shows like, hey, I'm taking my independence at home seriously, and I want you to take it seriously as well and support me in that.
What do you think is one mistake that families make when they're trying to help their aging parents?
Well, I think it's a very tough position to be in when you look at the
Very.
person that you have looked up to, and perhaps gave parental hero status to, starting to show decline. And I think the hardest part is the role changing. I mean, I saw it in my own life. My dad was a very successful businessman. And then he got Parkinson's, and then he just started to change, and I became then the the family
Caregiver,
influencer,
right?
the one who was really kind of leading the thing. And I think that's really it's so first you have to understand that human condition, and then second is you have to always when dealing with your parents is still treat them with respect. They're still humans. The one thing that really I see is sometimes the treating adults like children is not the right way to go.
No.
And a lot of times we see that there's been a lot of discussion about caregivers who will talk like babies to the older adults and things, and that's that's just not the way people want to be treated. And so
No.
that's way, as a family member dealing with somebody who's older, uh, empathy needs to be paramount over your frustrations, because there's a lot of frustrations
Very
that
much.
that happen in that family, dynamic.
And let me say that I think it is so important, and I know that you agree with me, that age is not a factor. Some people will say to me, my parents are in their 70s. Okay. And what does that have to do with anything? And then there are other people whose parents are in their 90s. I'm fortunate that I have a parent who's in her now past mid 100s, right? She's 106 and a half this month. So why do we categorize people? And I think when you talk about how we address older adults, first of all, it's their stage, not their age. And we need to get rid of this idea that because they're over 55 or they're 55 plus or they're 65 plus, that all of a sudden they're old and we have to treat them like they're old. My mom said to somebody in her assisted living community last week, I'm 106 and don't treat me like I'm old. And we're all looking at her like, sure, mom. But she doesn't want to be treated that way. So why, we have to get beyond that. And I think also, let me go back to this. This is really important. Let's talk about our mutual real estate background. You and I, that you said, well, these people have been in their homes 20 or 25 years. Yes. So we always find that real estate agents, as a general rule, will say, okay, I want to break into the senior market. Therefore, I'm going to call the title company and ask them to give me a list. You're laughing. Give me a
Mhm.
list of people who've lived in their home 20 years or more. I'm going after them because now they're old. They're the silver tsunami. They want to move. Guess what? We don't want to move, and 20 years is nothing.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen. I think that's the biggest thing is like most people, no matter how old you are, you don't want to see yourself as old. I mean, and you might feel old because people will say, oh, "I feel old because I got out of the chair slower" or something like that. But they never admit. Most people don't admit that they're getting old and they need help. And in fact, what I've seen is like, "Hey, this is really great." I mean, again, I've heard two stories. Is like, when I've explained this, but our home operating system platform to older adults, they'll say, "It sounds really good, but you need to talk to my kids because I don't think I need this. But if you talk to them, they would say 100% that I need this." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you think you could benefit? Why?" And so this idea is like, or I would talk to my mom about like improvements, and she goes, I don't need that. But you know what? Susie's coming over to play bunco, and she I could do this for her because she needs it, even though there's nothing wrong with Susie either, right? It's just like it's people don't look through their own eyes. They want to see, and well, I could, if this can help somebody else, maybe I'll do it. And that's one of those, it's I don't want to say it's like selling a car, like a used car or something like that, but sometimes you have to show like, okay, well, Susie can benefit. We could put this in the house, and you know what? You'll benefit too, right? You'll get some benefit.
So we've talked about this home assessment where they can stand there and take pictures of their home. They send it to you, and you do an assessment. So what exactly is Senior Thrive? What does it do? What kind of equipment is it? How does it work?
Well, this is the greatest thing is that there is no equipment. The idea is like you have a phone, you know how to take a photo. Most everybody knows how to take a photo. So
Most
that
of us
that's
do.
one
Yes,
thing.
right here with our phone. Yeah.
Um, yeah, exactly. So if you can tap a phone, you can use Senior Thrive. Now, here's the thing: is like we did. We I've been building this now for about a year, and the thing about building a technology platform, that's just for me. But what we've done is we've organized Senior Thrive around like the natural rhythms of life at home. It's about the way you move through your home and your rooms, and to the way you stay connected to your loved ones. So what do I mean by this? So we have the physical rhythm, which is the home, which is we've talked a lot about that. It's how you move through your halls in your room, and we have Thrive Vision, which will scan the room you live in, and turning a place that you know by heart into a place that's actually working for your safety. But then we also have what I call the human rhythm, and that is connection. It's this there's the pulse of the family and those who support you and care for you. And that's where we have things like what we call the Thrive Circle. Is that we have this independence at home, strength together motto, where that there comes a time that everybody should be connected to someone. And unfortunately, there are a lot of older people who are living alone,
Yeah.
and some feel isolated. And that's where we have our Thrive Circle. And the Thrive Circle consists of either family or friends. And at some time, it may include a caregiver. Is that and that Thrive Circle supports the older adult. We also have the just kind of the hidden rhythm. Is we don't require people to buy hardware. We want to work with the tools that many people have. So whether that be a Fitbit or your Alexa in your home, is that our platform connects to those things.
Great.
So there's no change in your environment. We don't ask you to put up things in your room and things like that. It's not to say that those aren't important. Like again, your movement tracking in your home. There are passive devices that can do that. That's not our business. Our business is use the tools that you have, live the life that you want to live, but make sure that you're also setting goals, holding yourself accountable in a proactive way so that your life at home is much longer because you're using our tools and you're using the plans versus somebody who doesn't use these tools. I'm not going to say they're not going to live long, but what I'm saying is there's habits and there's rhythms that our platform helps you create and helps keeps you accountable to in a fun way. So it makes both the older adult, the family, and eventually could be a caregiver all connected into one space.
Okay, so we do this analysis. We send you the pictures. You put it together. Then what happens? We look at this every day and see if we're behaving better. I mean, how do we know? What does this do for the family members? What does it do for us?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. So we've done a lot of testing and building around this, taking a photo and using our engine to automatically assess the room. Okay. The thing about that is we realize is that it's not sticky, meaning it's something that you'll do once and maybe you'll do again in 3 months or 6 months. But it's not something that is really, it's something that it's a tool. And we realize, in talking to so many older adults and families, is that there's a lot of tools out there, right? So the goal is to bring tools together in one platform.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, you should scan rooms, and you should get the points, and you should get the action items to fix. That's one thing. The other thing you can do is we have brain games. So if you are at home and you are want to work on your cognitive improvements, play the brain games. If you have a dog, by the way, we look at the whole person who is aging at home and thriving at home, and a lot of people have animals. Some don't, but those who do, you need a place to track the information about your dog, about the health of your dog. That's there. We have things like medicine tracking. You log your medicines, and then
Yes.
by the way, you can
Now,
print
that's
those
important.
out. Folks still like printing,
Yeah.
right? So you can print that out. We also have an
Yes.
emergency card. Once you
Yes,
fill
they
in your
do.
emergency information, one, it's available on our platform for you and your family members or your caregiver, but it's also something you can print. You can put on your refrigerator. God forbid something happens and you have an ambulance come to your house. You've got your medications and you've got your
Yes.
emergency contact information.
Great idea. Yes, absolutely. Great idea.
Thank you. So that's the point. It's like we're trying to think about bringing everything together, because that way you don't have to log into 10 different platforms or use, my analogy of when you go to somebody's house and you try to turn their TV on and they got 10 different remotes. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, especially as you get older. That's why we built SeniorThrive. All in one place, If your goal is either as an older adult to say, I want to remain in my home as long as possible, this is the platform. If you're a family member who is concerned about your family member, your older adult family member living at home, this is the platform, right? Is like, and we are going to continue to evolve. Like we are at version 1.0, and we've got a ton of stuff in there. But we know that life changes, and we're going to make our platform change with you.
So for the people who are listening and they're saying, okay, but I've got a camera, or saw this thing on TV where I could just put a camera and it's going to tell me if mom is okay, or I can check in, a couple times a day and I can see her. So, or they can say, well, I have a medical alert button, where she lives now. We got her one of those things that she wears around her neck. So that's good enough. So how does this go to the next step?
Well, I think you have to be realistic about who's getting that peace of mind of one is cameras. That's a lot of issues with the cameras. So I'm not going to even go there. People get that, right? But yet people use them. I mean, you could buy a camera for $25 now and put it up in a corner, and you go, you can watch mom. But who's going to really do that all day? That gives you peace of mind, maybe as the child, and it erodes privacy. But what it doesn't do is actually work. It just doesn't work. Doesn't matter. If mom, it's the same thing as with anything you wear around your neck and you take off. It works X amount of time. Could be 40, 60, 70%, right? And so
Absolutely.
we're not a constant monitoring app either, by the way. So I'm not claiming that. But what I am claiming is that there are multiple tools that can work, but they would need to work in conjunction. My biggest thing is I've looked at like bringing in these they're called M Wave. Doesn't matter. They're little pucks, hockey pucks that you place in the corner of a room, and it could detect motion, and some can detect falls to a meaning, to some level, and they're great. However, my biggest thing is you can stick a puck up in your room in a room, but if you have not analyzed the environment first off, then you're still setting up for failure, right? And so you've got to look at things holistically, and that's the struggle I see with other providers in this space is that there's a ton of great solutions for older adults right now. Absolutely, I will not take that away from anyone, but they don't talk to each other, they don't work together, and so that's what I look to do is try to bring together this. Again, I call it an operating system. I'm a marketing guy, so that's what I decided.
Sure,
At the
that's
end
your
of the
frame of
day,
reference.
people just want a system that works together, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And that's what we all want. You're exactly right. Brian, can you share a story of a family who used your system and what that changed for them?
Well, absolutely. So, from a global level, um, you know, when I started looking at this, there's nobody who said, I've always wanted to take a picture of my bathroom so someone can tell me what's unsafe. Nobody says that, and so I realized that. And but here's what happens when we sit down and I do these type of podcasts, I do this kind of education and just say, hey, just try it, just take a photo. Like, and by the way, it doesn't cost you anything. You get 5 photos for free, with our service. So it's like you can try it. And the reaction that I had was immediate. Is that the rug that felt harmless, the dim hallway light and the towel bar that looks solid, but it isn't designed to hold any body weight,
Yeah.
became readily apparent, right? Is that what I said, just use this, just take a photo, let's take a look at this. And we started walking through these things, and it was like, oh, I never realized that. And why? Because that's the environment they live in. And then comes the shift of, yeah, I can fix that, or that's easy, or I didn't even think about that. I love those kind of reactions because it's just a disbelief that the environment that they're living in is, could be hazardous. B, simple as a photo. It's amazing.
Absolutely. So, have you seen situations where technology really prevented something serious, like a fall or a crisis of some kind?
Well, 100%. So here's the thing. So because we are, you know, preventative. It's not like a seatbelt, right? I can just say if you put a seatbelt on and you got in a car accident, I can say, well, the seatbelt kept you in place, right? What we can say is this: is that we've seen, and by the way, we've tested this in 212 different homes in the Laguna Woods area, and Laguna Woods is a senior community in Orange County, California, here, right? And what I can say is this: is that we've seen significant improvements in people's homes and what they've done. Has that prevented a fall? I would say 100% yes. But do we have the actual proof? It's hard to tell. So I can tell you this is if very simple, if you clean up the clutter that's on the floor of many people's homes, you will prevent a fall. And sometimes it just takes somebody else looking at it or taking a very smart technology to look at it and say, it's a little messy. You should clean that up.
It definitely will. We've agreed on this call that we're all living longer than ever before and will continue to. Do you think that technology is becoming just a necessity, a necessary part of aging as well?
Oh, I think that if you don't take advantage of technology, you're putting yourself, behind. And so I do think it is part of aging. I mean, and you can decide how proactive and passive you want it to be. I mean, I wear an Aura ring. I love it. I'm not here to do a promotion for that. But the idea is that it's completely passive. It's just like it's there. I don't even notice it. It's not something around my neck. So I think as we see AI to is a lot of people are afraid of it. But what it does is it takes the signals and it helps to make stories out of the signals. And so I think that's really important uh, is to embrace technology because it will make your life better.
So, what excites you the most about the future of age tech? What should families be paying attention to? What's coming along the line?
I think uh, what I see that is most in need of being solved and what's most exciting is the family caregiver role and how to give that person better tools to do that role that they didn't necessarily sign up for and they're certainly not being paid for. And so to me that is the area that excites me probably the most because it it's where one of the biggest pain points lies, and that's what I'm here to do. I mean, I could have stayed in my industry that I was in and been very successful. I decided to make a pivot over here because I wanted to make an impact, and I think that um, you know this whole ecosystem is in need of rework. The whole and I think that bringing that together is what excites me the most. A lot of times it is on helping the family caregiver, support their family member and support themselves in the best way.
And it would some people could say that our our process of caring for older people or our activities of taking care of older people, be it assisted living or whatever it is really a lot. It hasn't changed a lot, right? We're still, we maybe it's not a nursing home. Maybe we have more activities during the day. Maybe we have a dining room rather than people going there. But really, there's a lot that hasn't changed. And it would seem to me that there's a lot of room for growth and innovation. And rather than certainly, caregivers are going to be hard to find. That's a very expensive part of assisted living or of even living at home. But it just seems like there's a lot of room for innovation. What would you say about that?
I agree 100%. I mean, I think what we look at is a clinical view of aging versus the humanitarian view of aging. And so much of our systems and that we built have been around risk and reimbursement and clinical, right? And I mean, and I get it because Medicare pays for, what's medically necessary, and so things like the home are evaluated through that lens, right? So Medicare isn't going to, I don't know exactly what they pay for, but they're probably not going to pay for a gorilla grip on the bottom of your rug, right? So and but when you ask, older adults and families, they don't talk about, the clinical nature of their home. They just say, I want mom to stay in the home she loves, or I want to stay in the home I love, right? And if we approach things more from the perspective of the older adult in the family, then we can create better tools and better support, um, than if we're doing things because Medicare wants us to do it that way.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So if you could change one thing about how our culture views aging, what would it be?
Oh, listen, I think aging is an honor. Like, and I'll tell you, I had cancer at a very young age, and I used to sit there getting chemo, and everybody was so much older than me. They were 70s or 80s, and I said, oh my gosh, if I could live that long, and if I had cancer, I'm not going to say that getting cancer at 80 is a good thing, but I'll just tell you, it's better than getting it when you're in your 20s. And so I always, my lens of aging has always been through great honor, like, and is like, being appreciative towards the idea that you can grow older. But again, as we've talked about, uh, the number doesn't matter as much as
No.
the how you live your life, and that's what I look towards, is like, how do you live your life? How do you want to live your life? And who and what systems are there to support you in living that life the way you want to do that? And that's what I want to hear from older adults, is like, you're not giving up your life because you're older. No, you've earned this. So let's embrace it, and let's make sure you're successful at it, and don't let anybody take that away from you.
So along with that, then tell us, Brian, before we have to part with you for today, what does thriving in later life mean to you personally?
Well, if you're lucky enough, you're healthy,
Yeah.
and if you are uh, connected, I think that's very important. And if somebody's listening right now and they're listening at home, or they're just driving in their car and they're by themselves and they're going to go to an empty home, it's okay. You're not alone. And I think that there's ways to not be alone. Pets are a very good way. Reaching out to in online groups is really important. So I think thriving is something that we can write for ourselves, but I want to see thriving as being healthy, being connected, living in the home you love, supported by the people that care about you.
Great answers. We thank you so much for your time today. This is Brian Fluhr of Senior Thrive. Brian, just tell people briefly, where can they find you?
You can find me at SeniorThrive.com. I'm also Brian Fluhr. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. But really, come by SeniorThrive.com. I encourage you to sign up. And like I said, there it's free to try it. Sign up. Go for it.
Thank you,
Thank
Brian, for
you.
your time today, for being here on Always Ageless to share with us how we can be ageless for a very long time, how age doesn't matter. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you. And I'm certainly one of your followers on LinkedIn and other places. I'll see you at Age Tech events also, I'm sure. So thank you very much. And thank you for being with us. And thank you for all you do for older adults and for bringing us and our families together.
Thanks, Valerie. Great to be here.